Hi, Skwatter here again. Uh, yeah, another one of my obligatory little ramblings. God damn it, I don't want to talk about this game. Really, I don't. I hate the living shit out of it, honestly. I had played it previously, several years ago, and I remember it being terrible, and it still is. Not for the reasons that you may think, though. Uh, you know, a lot of people give this game flack for for the quality of its voiceovers, of its narration, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to give them a hard time for that sort of thing. Um, I think that for what they are, the voiceovers are passable. I would say. I mean, I know for a fact that they are goofy and stilted and awkward, to say the least. Sounds like a lot of them were done by pre- prepubescents, barely even being able to attempt an accent, especially Elias. That was completely ridiculous. And of course, Drax. Uh, uh, yeah, but again, I think that people don't understand where this game comes from. Uh, it is, again, a TurboGrafx 16 CD game, and if you know anything about those kinds of games, you will understand that the vast majority of the titles that were released for this system, especially in the United States, have had amateurish voiceovers, namely the Valis series. Um, that that basically is one right there. Valis 2 and Valis 3, those are completely ridiculous. Uh, and again, I'm not necessarily going to lump in Cosmic Fantasy 2 or Vasteel in there because those are, well, pretty much top of the line back in the day. They were done by Working Designs with a lot of the same people who did the voiceovers for the Lunar series. Um, but there's also Last Alert is another one with the. So to be honest, there's no shortage. Well, there is a shortage because there's only a few dozen of them, but there is figuratively no shortage of bad voiceovers in TurboGrafx CD games. And I think the reason for that is these games are ported for a system that was not very popular outside of Japan, that is. Uh, they were ported in the United States where this system did not have a whole lot of sway, where the company did not have a whole lot of money to throw at this sort of thing. And again, I know that this is a Super CD-ROM game, and Super CD-ROM came after um, well, the regular CD-ROM. Now that's interesting, actually. I've actually looked into this, and it turns out, like I always used to call it CD-ROM squared and Super CD-ROM squared, when actually from what I've been told more recently, it's actually CD-ROM-ROM and Super CD-ROM-ROM. It's like you're supposed to say ROM twice in each of them. So again, I can't necessarily remember where I've heard that, but it could have even just simply been on Wikipedia or something. But yeah, I mean that's an interesting little tidbit there. But again, with the voice acting here, as I said, small company like I know NEC USA even back in the day was a large and profitable company, but its video game arm of the company was not. So they did not have an endless amount of resources to throw at this game. And again, I don't think that a lot of people in the United States, even at NEC USA or TTI or wherever, uh, I don't think that anybody really had a whole lot of faith in the system at all, really. So I don't necessarily attack them for the quality of the voiceover in any of these games. As I said, it's goofy, stilted, awkward, and everything. Everybody sounds like they're from New York or something half the time, or barely being able to attempt an Irish accent. Um, and of course, but some of the voiceovers I would say are okay. Like you could expect to hear them in other sorts of games of this genre. Like Gaius and all these little mini bosses that really didn't have a whole lot of sway in the story other than coming up randomly, being like, yeah, I'm the boss of this continent. Okay, sure, whatever. Yeah, you weren't involved enough in the story to have any real weight uh, on me. So, and again, as with the voice acting, this was released at a time, as you can see from the copyright date, this was released at a time uh, when not a whole lot of people were confident, not only in this game, not only in the company, but in this format, the CD-ROM format. So, in fact, even if you go into the game menu, into the system menu, you can actually turn the narration off, which is actually something that I wish I had done, at least at one point in the game, and I wish I had the footage of it. Of course, it can be redone, anybody can do it, but the thing is that they actually gave you an option to turn that narration off. Because at the time, in the late 80s, early 90s, when this video game was being developed, people did not know that consumers would be receptive to voiced dialogue in games. I think that a lot of the time that depending on whoever you got to do the voiceovers, it might pull them out of the mystique of the game, the environment. It might be too jolting. Uh, it might take you out of the whole imaginative aspect of it, and they thought that it might be better for you to imagine their voices and read them. I'm just speculating on that. Really, I don't know how it would have worked if I had turned off the subtitle or the narration. But I think that it's really interesting to see that what a lot of people really hold up high the CD-ROM format for is for its use of cutscenes, full motion video, and voice dialogue. Well, in one of these earliest games, they thought that people wouldn't like that sort of thing, so they decided to make it more cartridge-like. And again, they have a lot of strange options in the menu, like again, an auto battle feature, which I really liked early on in the game, but I absolutely hated later on in the game. For God's sakes, I fucking hated that shit, especially when the enemies you were fighting had one-hit kills and the computerized battle system just didn't know how to handle it, didn't know when to cast the proper spells to make sure that they didn't cast these certain spells on you. And a lot of times, like, you didn't even die really, honestly. Like, you would get put to sleep or you get confused, and then like the battle would essentially be unwinnable at that point. And believe me, you'll see a lot of that in this playthrough if anybody other than myself watches these videos and the 6 subscribers that I have. But no, yeah, they have an auto battle feature, which to me is something very, very advanced and far beyond the reasonable uh, capability or capacity of games of this period, right? So sometimes it was useful, as I said, like when you were fighting simple guys that didn't use any spells or special moves or anything, that really cheap shot just killed your party in one hit. The Reapers were terrible for that. There were also these gigantic soldier sentinel creatures. I can't remember what they're called, but they'd shoot it like it'd flash across the screen. They'd shoot a ray of light, and uh, my characters would faint, right? And I'm just like, oh my god. Like, seriously, like at the end of the game, it was so terrible for that. Like, I wanted to rage quit the game so often, but I thought, I've done this before, and I remember it being terrible, and for God's sakes, it is. It is really terrible. Those Reapers, those Spectres, I'm not sure what those guys are that shoot the lasers out of their fucking asses or wherever they are, but I just had to finish it. But believe me, like, it was white in the knuckle, teeth gnashing, punching myself, anger. Very embarrassing. Very, very embarrassing. Not something I'd like anybody to see. But it's like I just couldn't believe it, right? Like, in certain battles, they would have characters that could resurrect their compatriots after they had been killed. Like, they would disappear from the screen. You had killed them. And the Reapers were able to do this. They resurrected their compatriots. And at that point, I was just like, well, shit, I might as well just reload a save state, which I did so many times. And forgive me if near the end the playthrough is rather jumpy or poorly cut, because it is. It really is. Those like guys, I'm using cheats. I am using more cheats now than I was before. I thought it would be easy, but it isn't. It isn't. I have I have cheated to give myself the best weapons and the best armor, the sword blaze and everything for all four characters instead of just two. And for God's sakes, it is more difficult in every way, shape, or form. Like I could not believe how insanely difficult this game was, and I thought like it would. That's just working designs who did that shit. Hell no. Like this is insane, right? And I mean, I just remember there being so many more um, playthroughs of this game, like back 4 or 5 years ago when I first played it. But it's like, I mean, there's a few people who have like maybe one or two little videos of them kind of dicking around with it. But and then there's nothing, right? There's a guy named David something on YouTube who has himself a little playthrough. He's got little 10, 15-minute videos, which I'll let you know were instrumental in me being able to finish the game. Because let me tell you, the one single damn walkthrough that exists for this fucking game is completely useless, especially at the end of the game. He has in this written walkthrough, he has a whole bunch of these little ASCII art maps that have all these stairs and doorways and treasure chests marked with letters and everything. It's like I've seen that before, and I like that sort of thing. But he never he this walkthrough does not tell you where to go, right? It just says stairs up, stairs down, stairs up, stairs down, stairs to this, stairs to that. But it never told you like go from stairs A on level 1 and then from stairs A on level 2 go to stairs T, right? Like that's what you're supposed to do with a walkthrough like that. That's what you're supposed to do with ASCII art maps that are labeled in that fashion. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to say you go from this letter on this level to this letter on this level. That's what you're supposed to do, and that didn't do it. This walkthrough didn't do it. Um, I'll also have to thank Ray VGM for his great map of the overworld. Um, that was definitely instrumental in me also being able to complete the game. But I mean, it's like again, I know I'm using cheats. I know I'm using a lot of cheats, and I don't know if maybe through using these cheats, maybe I exceeded some value in the game that made the game think since I was at level 99, maybe it thought I was at level 1, maybe I did that, or maybe I had too much gold and I exceeded some value there, or since my stats were all maxed out at 255, maybe it didn't know, or it wasn't able to recognize that fact, and whenever I equip something, maybe while still making my attributes go up, maybe I fucked something up in there. I understand that, and that's the bed that I've made for myself to sleep on with games like these. But in these other videos that I found on YouTube, uh, it wasn't hard for them. Like they'd get turns at the beginning of battles, while when I fought those same battles at a higher level with better stats and better weapons, the enemies would just pummel me to death. They would get. It's like each of the characters that I was fighting on the screen would get several turns just beating the hell out of my guys. And I gotta tell you, like I just could not believe it, you know? It's just insane, right? So I don't know if I did something wrong. I don't. Uh, but as I said, the game itself is beaten already. And I gotta tell you, I'm never playing this damn game again. Not ever again. I have my physical proof of what I did. I can go back and watch it. That's pretty much the only reason why I do these playthroughs. Um, So yeah, a lot of these games that I've played, pretty much all of them actually, I've already played through and beaten several years ago. So except other than maybe what was that? Cobra, the space adventure. Um, uh, that was one I that I didn't that I didn't play through before. But again, this is the reason why I do it. So I play through these games and I upload the footage to YouTube as a sort of motivation to play through and beat the game. And I've said this before because on several of these games I'd dick around in them and then I'd get sick of them and then I'd just drop them, right? But no, I wanna complete what I start and I wanna see it through to the finish. So but the thing is that with a game like this, you've got now I'm going to talk about something completely different. Again, it's a broken, disjointed ramble, right? So you've got your characters, Marcus, Logan, Giles, and Ethan, and Sonia. And I think they all get this game looks so awesome, like especially in the opening cutscenes, like it was all like high color and high resolution, and the voiceovers were perfect, right? Like nothing compared to what you would hear later on in the game. But you you have your core set of characters, and I gotta tell you, I don't know what they were thinking with Marcus necessarily, because he basically fucks off from your party maybe a third of the way through the game. I mean, I guess they didn't want it to be a total sausage fest or something, but for a guy who gets a big introduction in the opening cinema, and who also has a voice actor, uh, I should think that he has a larger role in the story, which he unfortunately didn't. He was basically, even though he came before this game I'm talking about, he was your Nash from Lunar. Nash, of course, he betrays your party by working with the bad guy. So yeah, that's Marcus's role there. So, but of course Marcus came before him. So Nash is your Marcus, if you want to put it that way. So I mean, he gets kicked out of the group unceremoniously, right? So, and I was thinking maybe like you could have you could like change your leader and stuff like that. I mean, again, just so many strange uh, options in this game. Like you just would not expect it for such an old and simple game. Like you could change whoever was leading your party and stuff like that. Like there are things in this game that you would not see for another several years in console style RPGs like this. Um, like the as I said, the narration, the auto battle, the leader, whoever you want to see walking around on the screen, and whenever the characters would speak, the character sprite would change to match who was speaking, which I thought was very interesting. Um, so yeah, I mean it's this game is really quirky, honestly. I'm not sure really what to say about it. Is that other than that it's extremely hard and it got me so fucking angry at certain points. It's always gratifying to beat the game, though, and you know, I just honestly don't know. Yeah, it seemed that these a lot of these things, some of the things in the game were like you get to go to every location, right? But there are like these little humps, like these little dragon pods or something, and you'd think that maybe they have like a big bearing on the story or something, when really they don't. Like they're spaced all across the world of Isranasa, and they just have no real bearing on the story. You see them, like you can't really enter them. They say there's this lady in the game who says she can enter them and talk to dragons and stuff like that. But I mean, if that were the case, then just have one throughout the entire game and make that important to the storyline. But it seems that like I don't know, something must have been left out from the final production of the game, because there are several of those, and there's I read a walkthrough and both written and video, and we didn't do anything with those as far as I know, right? Um, and sometimes I use cheats. Like I use cheats in this game to get the dragon flute and the lantern earlier on, which I'm glad I did, because the lantern I didn't find it from any of the Cyclopses. Like the Cyclopses, where Giles made that hole in the wall. I never fought any Cyclopses, right? Like I know that I kind of flew around a lot, so I didn't get into a whole lot of random encounters, but I never saw any Cyclopses, and I never got the lantern there. Uh, so yeah, and like it has really neat little things. Like again, like these weird things like it has the lantern so you can see in the darkness, right? So you don't have to waste your money on torches. And it also has the Seeker Orb that gives you a map of the dungeon, right? It's like, again, like you just would not expect these sorts of things to exist in a game like this from this time, right? So, I mean, it's got some points to its credit there, but, and I don't know if I fuck something up in the game. I don't know if I mess something up, but it was almost impossible for me to beat this game with cheats up the ass. Like it was just insane. And Drax, of course, he was a very very firmly established adversary. And I guess I didn't remember this from my last playthrough, but of course you kill him basically halfway through the story, and so that was yeah, really underwhelming, really boring. I thought that he would kind of be the force of nature throughout the entire game. But then there's Naja, this evil dragon that only gets spoken of maybe when you're like 70% of the way through the game, and Naja is never mentioned in any cutscene or anything like that. I mean, they have these little in-game cutscenes that sound like everybody's speaking into a tin can with poorly, like low quality music recorded in the background. They speak about him there, but it's like you only see him at the very end when you fight him and in the final cutscene, right? Like there's no interludes, there's no intermissionary cutscenes in this entire game. It's only just the one at the beginning and the one at the end. Everything else is done using in-game graphics, which I don't appreciate, honestly. I think that a game like this certainly deserved more cutscenes, like me being used to playing Cosmic Fantasy 2, which is a simpler game on a simpler format, right? So I mean, I don't know. It's like it's as if this game like started out so perfect, but then it just went downhill from there. So yeah, you defeat the dragon, the evil dragon. You're a dragon slayer now. I guess the game would be lying to you if you didn't slay a dragon. But then at the end, he has his little speech. Mankind has always been the poison. And again, goofy writing and everything like that. But again, I think it gets the point across definitely. Uh, so yeah, and then kind of weird stilted ending. Live and let live. I couldn't have said it better myself. Hey, Logan, buddy, you're making me blush, buddy. Wah wah wah. Yeah, yeah. No, that's a yeah. I guess the one thing I take solace in is I guess the people who made this had to have had a good time while making it, because I mean you would have to just burst out in laughter after every single line that some of these people spoke, right? And just the names of certain characters like Old Bob and stuff like that, and uh, you know, it's goofy as all hell, you know. And they sort of kind of had like the working designs kind of uh, meta humor, self-referential sort of pop culture references, which I also liked. But one thing I gotta say about this game is, my God, it's like this is supposed to be like it's on a CD with I think 2 megabits. I'm not sure if it's megabytes, probably just megabits of graphics RAM, and with all of its high 512 colors on screen at once. Uh, though I'm not entirely sure if that's on screen at once. I think that's an entire palette of 512 and maybe 256 on screen at one time, but several times more than that of the Genesis and I should say the Mega Drive. The Mega Drive version of this game looks phenomenal compared to the Turbo Duo, which is supposed to be in every single way superior. But it isn't. The Mega Drive version, of course, has lower color quality, but uh, all of the all of the character sprites are very well detailed. They're much larger and everything. Everything looks better. They're able to fit more text into every speech bubble and everything. Uh, so yeah, I mean that just basically proves that even though it's a CD-ROM system, the TurboGrafx 16 CD is still at heart an 8-bit system. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Don't know if anything else I could say. Oh, Princess Micah. Yeah, you know, your Logan's love interest throughout the entire game. Not present enough in the story, if you ask me. She gets stolen away sometime, like maybe 2/3 of the way through. She doesn't even come from the same continent that you're from, and you have maybe one or two, like two or three meetings between Logan and Princess Micah, and a lot of the times from her voiceover, she doesn't seem very happy to see him. So yeah, that definitely could have been written better. And the only payoff you get is, you know, they get married at the end. Uh, Not in the ending cutscene, but at the very end of the credits, right? So yeah, sort of dropped the ball on that one. Certainly could have done better there. So, but all in all, I'm glad that it's over. I'm never gonna play it again. It's not a completely terrible game, but god damn is it hard. Uh, it's kind of unfortunate that this is sort of the swan song, or one of them, one of the very few swan song RPGs of the TurboGrafx 16 CD, or the Turbo Duo, whatever you want to call it. So I guess I'll just leave it at that there. All right then. Uh, Thanks very much, everybody, for listening. By everybody, I mean the crickets. I don't see any. I don't even see any crickets, but I mean they've got to be around here somewhere, right? I'm not the only person around this world, am I? All right. Well, those are my random disjointed thoughts on this The Legend of Heroes Dragon Slayer by Falcom and Hudson Soft and TurboGrafx 16 and Super CD-ROM system and everything else that's on the cover of the game. Alrighty, so again, thanks very much to the Ether, and I'll see you again next time. Skwatter out.